We've covered some serious topics on this channel. Racism, sexism, terrible fashionism, but now it's time to get a little classier and discuss classic classism. I'll try to put on a class act as I rank and discuss the classes of Baldur's Gate 3, and by extension D&D, from worst to best. The overall power of classes, their combat and utility options, the class fantasy and role-playing opportunities. There's a lot to consider, however, all of it is dwarfed by one singular, all-important metric. How cool and fun do I personally find the class to be? So while you will probably be disappointed when I rank your favorite or what you consider most powerful class incorrectly, just remember to keep it classy in the comments, as honestly every single one is an S tier with some absolutely insane build potential and enjoyment, so let's just roll with it. I'll also be ranking these subclasses within the class as well. As always, if you find yourself enjoying the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more rankings. Now, let's break through the class ceiling.
Defy all enemies.
Number 12, Druid. Bear with me here, I know you may already want to badger me in the comments and show your claws, but the Druid in Baldur's Gate 3 is just simply not it for me. While it's certainly not helped that it's the class of choice for my least favorite companion in the game with Halsin, that is actually negated by the incredibly cool Jaheira you can recruit as well. Druids, however, in the class fantasy, roleplay, and gameplay fall a little flat to me, as I think they're just a class that's much better realized on tabletop than in a video game due to its natural and necessary limitations. Where their class signature ability, Wild Shape, can create some extremely creative and memorable moments in your tabletop Dungeons and Dragons, as players can use various animal shapes in ways that are only really limited by your imagination. In Baldur's Gate 3, we see the addition of a few simple abilities of arguable usefulness per wild shape, and that's kind of it. Though the additional HP can help you build into some of the best tanking capabilities within the entire game. Put simply, the constraints of a video game structure hurts the Druid more than any other class in the game for me, and seeing as it's already a class I'm not really that interested in anyways, puts it at the bottom. That's not to say you can't build or play an extremely fun one, however, and owlbearing your way through encounters does have a certain appeal, I will admit. Druids do get some really cool spells, and though I don't find them as fun as other magic users, they can be used very effectively as pure casters as well. Conjure Woodland Being, Entangle, Moonbeam, they have lots of very flavorful and powerful spells that I do enjoy using. As far as unique dialogue and role-playing options though, I was pretty disappointed with the number and options available to you, especially considering the large focus on the Druid's Grove within the first act. While there are some class-specific options and even a unique interaction to become Faith Warden of the Grove, it still felt a little lacking when compared to other class options throughout the game, or at least more just kind of to me. It's also strange how little Halsin or Jaheira have to say to a Druid tab as well, where I think some unique branching dialogue to explore your character's role as a Druid up to that point would have really added some awesome flavor. Roleplay wise, Druids even on tabletop have never really appealed to me, honestly, and I find they are limited in a way that isn't necessarily super interesting. Sure, you can make a city-based or urban Druid, but it always felt like the entire class fantasy was working against you unless you embraced its hippy-dippy nature-loving flavor, which for some people is great, and hey, more beast power to you if so. As far as races go for Druid, Wood Elf is a natural choice from a role-playing perspective, as how much wood could a Wood Elf wood if a Wood Elf could have wood? I think I just gave myself an aneurysm. With your increased movement speed and dark vision as a Wood Elf applying to your wild shapes, from a gameplay perspective it's pretty good too, though I always like the idea of Dwarven Druids for some reason. They share a similar attunement to nature in ways that open up interesting and unique character ideas for me. So while the general class is clearly not my favorite, what about the subclasses? Again, going from worst to best, I'll have to start with the Land Druid, aka the Nature Wizard. The subclass of choice if you want to fully realize the Radagast fantasy. The Circle of the Land always felt like a watered down wizard or sorcerer that didn't quite focus on the class's core strengths from a flavor perspective. Again, not to say land druids are bad, as in fact they probably have some of the best AoE control abilities within the game, but from a flavor and role-playing perspective I've never been interested due to just preferring to play a different full caster if I want to go that direction. Next would be the Circle of the Stars, the new subclass added with patch 8. While I think a more celestial, cosmos-focused druid is a cool idea, I find their abilities and starry forms kind of lacking visually, and from a role-playing perspective I can't really see myself starring as one. The second best druid subclass for me is the Circle of Spores, which while I once again think some of its abilities are a little lacking, it's just really cool from a flavor and character perspective. A fungi druid focusing on the cycle of decay and growth with the ability to Last of Us your enemies and reanimate their bodies through spores is just absolutely badass. though it does lose out to my favorite druid subclass, which is the Circle of the Moon, which fully embraces the druidic fantasy of literally being one with nature as you embrace wild shaping into powerful and deadly beasts. Bear with me, but moon druids are just the most pure form of druid to me, and have always been the one I'm most interested in a class that I struggle to find any interest in at all. Overall, while druids can be very versatile and powerful, they're just not for me. Number 11, Ranger. Before you Rangers track me down, let me take a shot and get my point across first. I admit, as I was scripting this list, Rangers were actually dead last for me until my close friend Winterwolf CR7, a very knowledgeable and great D&D player, talked me around a bit on them. Not really that much, clearly, as they're still 11th, but he did make me appreciate the class in a new light, mostly by pointing out Drizzt and Aragorn, which, okay, fair enough. Though an argument could be made that Aragorn is more of a fighter than Ranger, but let's save that for another nerdy video. Despite the popularity of the class in media, Rangers have always been a bit notorious in Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D for generally being considered either the weakest or worst designed class in the game, and there's a few reasons for this. For me personally, a lot of it just comes down to the class fantasy and general abilities, as I find them to just be okay. Nothing mind-blowing or particularly intriguing, and in a world with as many incredible classes and role-playing options as Baldur's Gate 3, just sort of fade into the background for me. Rangers always just felt like the somewhat generic adventurer class. Highly competent and skilled maybe, but they really just fit that general, outdoorsy, experienced traveler role, which is at the same time kind of the role almost every single D&D character needs to fill anyways. In Baldur's Gate 3, most of their unique dialogue options boil down to just being an experienced and confident individual, which while cool at times can also be a little dry and honestly boring. Though other than being well traveled, this does make Ranger a very pliable class for role-playing, as you can determine any number of backgrounds or adventures that would have landed you in a terrifying tentacled slimy ship as the game kicks off. As far as their abilities go, again, there's nothing extremely enticing to me, though you can get a pretty cool beast companion as a beast master, but signature skills like Hunter's Mark or Ensnaring Strike are just kinda meh. And if you want that fantasy archetype, other classes honestly do it better, like the rogue or fighter with a bow. So even the main thing I normally associate with a ranger, they're not necessarily the best at, which is a shame. As far as preferred races for a ranger, once again a wood elf is a natural and decent option, though probably due to Drizzt I find drow rangers particularly appealing if I really force myself to make one. So for the ranger subclasses, my least favorite is probably the newly added Swarmkeeper. I know, a fantasy beekeeper is pretty great as a concept, but from the little I've played of one so far, I didn't get the buzz around it, as the features are just a little underwhelming. I don't think it's as strong as your other options. Next though would probably be the Hunter, which embraces the Slayer archetype of the class, and is probably your closest to just a stock ranger character. Outside of Volley, Whirlwind, and Hordebreaker, admittedly awesome abilities, there's not much here to excite me either. My second favorite of the ranger subclasses is the Beastmaster, which gives you a best animal friend to travel with. The animal companions have some pretty interesting unique abilities of their own, with my favorite probably being the bear's honeyed paws, that allows them to disarm an enemy, which is both useful and funny, as you imagine Winnie the Poohing a demon's weapon out of their hands. A very flavorful and unique subclass. However, my absolute favorite, and honestly what kind of redeems the ranger in general for me, is the insanely powerful Gloomstalker, which uses stealth and shadows to do some ridiculous damage and sneak attacks. Gloomstalkers can be incredibly fun, and when I get down to it, the primary reason, rangers rank just above druids for me personally. Overall, while again not my favorite class, plenty of fun can be arranged here. Number 10, Wizard. Before you strike me down with arcane might, let me explain to you nerdy wizards why you are near the bottom of the list. And it's just that, you are nerds. Where wizards need to study and practice magic, the other Chad casters just do it out of pure will and charisma. Okay, now that I've pissed off every wizard-loving player, I actually really like this class, just not more than most of the others in Baldur's Gate 3 specifically. Wizards are the masters of the arcane, able to adapt to basically any situation, and their spell scribe ability to pick and choose and learn any spell within the game makes them probably the most overall versatile class. Especially out of combat, as you can easily slow fall, jump, speak with animals, knock out locks, fly, do pretty much anything your little wizardly heart desires. It's a great archetype as you can pull out any magical trick in the book, literally, for creative and fun solutions. Abilities like Arcane Recovery that let you replenish spell slots are helpful as well. All that being said, wizards for me are just not nearly as interesting or intriguing as other arcane and casting focused classes. While I think their huge variety of subclasses, each with its own unique spin, is an awesome way to reconcile and hand handle all the different schools of magic within the world of Faerun, I never find myself completely drawn to playing a wizard. I won't lie, in Baldur's Gate 3 specifically, I feel that's in large part due to Gale, and how he just sort of steals the show for any wizard to have or player character. Gale's origin story and character arc is just so intrinsically tied to being a wizard, and let's be honest, an extremely over-the-top and overbearing one at that. One who is the lover of Mystra herself and the youngest archmage in history, he just sort of steals any other wizard's thunder by being so unique and tied to the weave itself. Now, playing Gale as an origin character is a different story, and so while I have wizard ranked fairly low, it's all down to personal preference, like pretty much the entire list, so please don't fireball me. While origin Gale gets a lot of unique interactions and dialogue, wizards in general actually get less than I would have thought, with only a handful of unique dialogue options, making you feel like a true master of the arcane arts, so that was slightly disappointing to me. While gnome and elven wizards are always a natural fit, my race of choice for a wizard is of course the Dragonborn. Not because of any racial abilities or traits, but solely because you can then be a lizard wizard, which you just can't beat it. As far as wizard subclasses go, they feature the highest amount with a subclass for every school, so I'll just mention my least and most favorites here. My least favorite, or the worst for me, is the School of Illusion, which, while extremely powerful, almost brokenly so on tabletop, suffers in Baldur's Gate 3 again due to the limitations of a video game. Learning illusion spells at half cost is whatever, as I personally rarely use them, and minor illusion is next to useless, so casting it as a bonus action does nothing for me. And a free sea invisibility is extremely underwhelming as a full class feature compared to other schools of magic. The best for me is either evocation or blade singing, with the former making those pesky team killing AoE spells no longer a concern and making for a very powerful blaster caster. Blade singing, while I admittedly haven't progressed very far in one, is unique and flavorful enough that I think it deserves a shout out as a very fun wizard subclass. So overall, while wizards are fun, now that I've got it over with, you nerdy wizards can go back to your studying and reading. Number 9, Monk. Enough monkeying around. Next on my list is the ever stoic and zen monk. Monks are always an interesting addition to any D&D or Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough, and while they can be extremely fun, I just don't personally connect with them on a role-playing and character building level. I don't know, maybe my key is out of sync or something. Monks are the surprisingly durable and hardy bruisers of Baldur's Gate 3, able to go toe-to-toe with almost anything, using nothing but their fists and feet. While punching a dragon to death with fists as powerful as steel has a certain charm, it doesn't, okay, never mind, that's actually really badass, and I do get the appeal. In the game though, monks mostly just piss me off because the Gith monks you fight every once in a while throughout the story are some of the most bullshit pain in the ass fights in the game, as they will easily cripple, stun, and crit their way through your party like a hot knife through butter. Outside of those assholes though, I've generally struggled to find a compelling backstory or role-playing opportunity with the monk, and I find their unique class dialogue a little dry. It mostly involves balance and healing and is extremely suited to a purely good playthrough, but none of it really made me excited to actually play a monk in and of itself. What does excite me though about a monk is your insane martial abilities, as monks can be crazy fun, especially with a few items tailored to their playstyle. Tavern Brawler monks are insanely good, as you can easily reach, knock down, push, topple, and cripple any enemy on the battlefield with your increased movement speed and jumping abilities. Deflect missiles, flurry of blows, step of the wind, there are some extremely cool and flavorful abilities to use as a monk, and even though they're ranked slightly lower, it's honestly not due to their gameplay at all. Monks in Baldur's Gate 3 also get very unique animations and a variety of unique items for unarmed and unarmored melee combat. And as far as races for monks go, my first pick is probably actually a Gith, again due to trying to recreate the absolute ass whooping I'm forced to go through in the main story. However, despite Gith monks being a thing in the game itself, I find the dialogue is very at odds with their harsher, colder demeanor. Wood Elves' increased movement speed and lean frames are a natural fit once again for a monk as well. As far as monk subclasses go, starting with the worst, it unfortunately has to go to the newly added Way of the Drunken Master Monk. While nobody appreciates a fun drunken fighter more than me, Baldur's Gate 3 implementation of this classic kung fu trope was pretty underwhelming. While the attempts to work drunkenness and alcohol into the gameplay are admirable, all the traits are just kinda meh compared to other monk subclasses. Second worst is probably Way of the Four Elements, which is honestly a subpar caster. Being a melee caster hybrid is cool, and I appreciate each spell having unique monk key art, but you just run out of resources way too quickly and become a basic monk without any passives or other bonuses to help you out. Next is the Way of Shadows, the sneaky teleporting monk. Again, minor illusion is whatever, but increased stealth and the ability to teleport to and from shadows is an extremely flavorful and cool technique for that ninja type of playstyle. Though it all pales in comparison to my favorite monk subclass, which is the Way of the Open Hand. This fully embraces the ability for the monk to just smack a bitch and improves on it in every way. Open hand monks get very powerful and unique flurry of blow uses, such as pushing or toppling enemies and infusing your fists with various elemental damage types, which is just awesome. Open hand monks with feats like mobile are just complete monsters monsters in battlefield control, as you can get wherever you want to immediately and have your way with your enemies. Overall, while monks aren't my favorite from a role-playing flavor perspective, I think they can be an extremely fun class to play in gameplay. Number 8, Warlock. For you Pact lovers and Dark Entity followers, let's go to war, cause I got this shit on lock. Warlocks hit number 8 on my list, as while I do enjoy some deal making and hexing, I can't say they're close to my favorite class within Baldur's Gate 3. Warlocks lend themselves to darker, edgier characters and can make for some absolutely incredible role-playing and character building opportunities both in Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D. For D&D at least, you essentially have a baked-in plot hook with your character, with your patron, as not many other classes come with quite so much literal baggage right off the bat. While much like Gale will can steal some of your Warlock thunder if you choose to play a Tavlock, as his patron directly influences the plot and shows up in some major ways, playing a Dark Urge Warlock is incredibly fitting as you try and determine the source of your corruption and memory loss. That being said, I played through as a Great Old One bound Warlock, and I was actually pretty disappointed with the lack of unique dialogue options and patron-specific interactions throughout the game. While I understand the limitations here, and there were a few cool unique advantage rolls as you beseech your patron, it didn't have nearly the impact to the playthrough and roleplaying as I would have liked. In general, Warlock's integration into the world and interactions with Will felt like a big missed opportunity, unfortunately. Gameplay-wise, I'll be honest, while I think Warlocks have some really cool abilities like Eldritch Blast, their Eldritch Invocation, Arms of Hadar, Eldritch Blast, Hex, Hellish Rebuke, Eldritch Blast. Did I mention Eldritch Blast? For a spellcaster, I find them extremely limiting, and probably 90% of my time as a Warlock was spent spamming Eldritch Blast. But it helps that it's my favorite sounding and looking cantrip within the entire game, and the best one overall, and they just absolutely nailed it. But I still never got the hang of having such limited spell slots, even when focusing on concentration spells. Warlocks always felt like this elusive playstyle that I never could quite grasp, as I lacked the utility and control of a wizard, a bard, or the blasting power of a sorcerer. For racial pick, I have to go Tiefling, as it's just too fitting. Being a devil-descended demonic-looking character bound to an otherworldly entity is the perfect amount of emo edge you need sometimes. Speaking of subclasses though, my least favorite for the Warlock is probably the Fiend, which while very cool flavor-wise, just makes you a subpar blaster caster in my opinion. Giving you spells like Fireball is great, but at that point I'd probably opt for another Spellslinger class. My second least favorite would probably be the Archfey, which admittedly gives you more useful and control-based spells than the Fiend, such as Fairy Fire and Plant Growth, and being able to turn invisible and cast Misty Step back to back is incredibly useful as well. My second favorite Warlock subclass is definitely the Gooey One, or Great Old One, mostly due to my love of Lovecraftian sort of horror. Having a pact with some ancient, unknowable, incomprehensible, unfathomable eldritch being is sort of what being a Warlock is all about to me, and getting spells flavored that way is awesome, with ones like Phantasmal Force and Bestow Curse. My favorite subclass though is the Hexblade, which pretty drastically changes your Warlock playstyle and gives you some incredibly cool melee abilities like Hexblade's Curse and Hexbound weapons. Hexblades are just badass, able to recover health from slain enemies and raise their spirits to fight on their side. Just a really cool subclass that redeems Warlocks for me quite a bit. Number 7, Fighter. Come on then, I know you want to fight me, let's do it, let's go. The Fighter is the best at what they do, and what they do isn't very nice. Your basic warrior, fighters are honestly extremely powerful and scale really well within Baldur's Gate 3, as I pretty much relied on Lae'zel in the late game to carry me in almost every encounter. Why I rank fighters lower than others, however, is much like the monk down to personal preference when it comes to role-playing and some unique abilities. Fighters are your everyman adventurer. No magic, no fuss, just pure skill and strength of will, which while cool in a world full of magic and monsters can be a little bland. In a way, that's to their favor, as without any magical baggage or innate class fantasy, the fighter is a really good blank canvas to create whatever type of character or backstory your heart desires. So while fighter may not be my favorite to get into as a character, I can appreciate what they bring to the table. Gameplay-wise, fighters are monsters in combat. With 3 attacks, a feat like Great Weapon Master and Action Surge, you can get upwards of 7 attacks in a single turn, which is just way too much fun. In addition to dishing out massive damage, skills like Second Wind and Indomitable give you good sustain as well, with heavy armor and possibly a shield to further boost up that AC. Fighters' unique fighting style is a cool way to completely shape your playstyle to your liking as well, with archer fighters being even better ranged combatants than rangers in my opinion. Fighters, however, really falter in unique dialogue and role-playing options within the game though, with almost no notable fighter-specific dialogue to speak of within the entire game, at least none that I came across. though pairing it with the soldier background will ensure you get plenty of inspiration throughout your journey. As far as races go though, I have to give it to the half orcs, as they're just built to be fighters with pretty much every racial trait. Relentless endurance in case you hit 0, savage attacks further boosting your damage, they complement fighters and their crit farming abilities extremely well, and are just badass on top of that. Don't fight it, just embrace some Tusk love. As far as subclasses go, fighters get some pretty unique ones that change your playstyle quite a bit. However, for their worst, I'd probably go with Arcane Archer, despite the incredibly cool flavor and themes. While doing things like curving your shots or firing banishing arrows can turn the tide, from what I've played so far I've been a little underwhelmed as you just run out of arcane shots really quickly, even with them replenishing on a short rest. It's a great class fantasy that's not quite as powerful as I'd like, to be honest. Next worst, which isn't really bad, is the Eldritch Knight. Once again, flavor-wise, Eldritch Knights are incredibly cool, combining martial ability with some arcane power. I've always wanted to play one on tabletop especially, but haven't quite had the chance. I know there's some niche Eldritch Knight builds out there that make them stupidly powerful, but to me, I was never able to nail down a good balance for them. However, the champion makes much more sense. This is your basic, why not just hit things harder class, as you can get some insane crit farming as a champion fighter. With your multiple attacks and lower crit range, you'll be decimating opponents, though with how basic champion fighters are, there's not much more you'll be doing other than just hitting things really well. My favorite subclass for fighter is the Battle Master, which is probably unsurprising, but here we are. Battle Masters get maneuvers, powerful battlefield and combat control abilities that can honestly trivialize fights, especially maneuvers like disarming attack. The range of options for Battle Master adds an incredibly cool layer of tactical decision making that's usually completely absent in melee combat in Baldur's Gate 3 and makes for a very fun playstyle. Overall, fighters are a 9 out of 10 gameplay, 4 out of 10 RP class for me personally, and if you disagree, we'll just have to fight over it. Number 6, Rogue. Picking apart the next class is tricky, but luckily I have the skills as we have the ever shifty Rogue. Despite my name, this is ironically not my favorite class in Baldur's Gate 3 or D&D, though one I've always longed to play on the tabletop, but so far it has eluded me. Rogues are the ultimate skill monkeys, able to pass most checks through their expertise and variety of proficiencies, and they can make for one of the more unique playstyles within Baldur's Gate 3, that of stealth. Turn Baldur's Gate into a Hitman simulator as you sneak, stab, poison, and pickpocket your way through the game, tormenting innocents and enemies alike with thievery and guile. It's a very strong archetype that's been a staple in RPGs for as long as I can remember, and the Rogue embodies it fully. Rogues have very strong role-playing opportunities as they actually provide a lot of out-of-combat or even social interactions you might not be able to achieve otherwise. So whether you're a swashbuckling swordsman or a stealthy thief, there's probably something in the Rogue's kit for you. From what I've played, Rogues also make for some particularly interesting evil characters in playthroughs, as especially in Act 3 you can actually get some very diabolical, interesting, and unique class dialogue and interactions due to your connections to the dirty dealings of the underworld. I also feel like while Astarion is a rogue and represents the class fairly well, he doesn't really steal the thunder of playing a rogue Tav or Dark Urge rogue to me. And hell, even running double rogue within the party can make for some pretty insane damage combos or utility as you play around with darkness and stealth. Speaking of, sneak attacks and stealth are insanely good in Baldur's Gate 3, and the ability to hide as a bonus action and get multiple sneak attacks and ranged sneak attacks in combat can make your rogue deal some stupid damage, and was something I relied on heavily with my assassin rogue playthrough. As far as favorite races for a rogue, while gnomes and halflings are very fitting thematically and in gameplay, I have to give it to the Dwergar dwarves. Not only do you look absolutely badass, shrouded in darkness and like a true menace, but their racial traits are just crazy good for a stealthy, sneaky character. Superior dark vision and their innate ability to go invisible pretty much all the time outside of combat at level 5 makes for some really overpowered stealth within the game. Being Underdark dwellers and less than honorable makes for some great character moments as well that complement the rogue playstyle nicely. As far as rogue subclasses though, my least favorite or worst to me is the Arcane Trickster, unfortunately, as I do think they're a very fun and cool subclass in D&D. In Baldur's Gate 3 they're just extremely underwhelming and weak. Having a handful of spells is nice, but intelligence is really hard to prioritize as a stat as a rogue, and I find Mage Hand has varying degrees of usefulness. Making it invisible and permanent really doesn't do anything significant to improve my opinion of the spell or subclass. However, it's really the only subclass I don't like because the other three are each awesome in their own way, starting with the Assassin. Assassins are pretty insane. They're basically farming crits and sneak attacks during any combat, and taking alert on an assassin and getting guaranteed sneak attacks against targets that haven't taken their turn when you win initiative every time is an amazing combo, and it's a subclass and class fantasy that is well worth your time. However, I do slightly prefer the Thief, as I find having an extra bonus action given all the cool bonus actiony stuff rogues can do makes for some very fun and engaging gameplay. Thieves also get invisibility at later levels, though their reduced fall damage just kind of sucks. But my favorite rogue ranks, rogue ranks subscribe, is the Swashbuckler, mostly because it's just flat out one of the most entertaining and badass character archetypes out there. Rakish audacity and sneak attacks, dirty tricks, and panache, there's just so many extremely flavorful abilities that fully embrace the charismatic swashbuckling character fantasy. Overall, while the rogue is not my absolute favorite, it does continue to steal my heart. Number 5, Barbarian. Where sneaking and backstabbing are all well and good, sometimes you just need to kick a door down and charge in screaming furiously, and so enters the Barbarian. Always a very strong class in Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D from a fantasy, role-playing, and gameplay perspective, Barbarians are definitely my favorite fully martial focused class in the game. Being literally too angry to die and being able to pick up and throw enemies at each other and just generally tear shit up is at the heart of what being a Barbarian is all about, as you rip and tear until it is done. However, surprisingly, I found in my Dragonborn Barbarian playthrough that they get some of the funniest and best class unique dialogue options within the entire game, and I was consistently laughing my head off at how brutish and overbearing and even stupid you could play your Barbarian. If you haven't tried one yet, seriously, you are missing out. They are extremely funny. Where Karlach does steal the show at times as a Barbarian who burns red hot fire when she rages, it doesn't mean your own Barbarian can't have their share of the fun either, and the subclasses really create some good variety here. Rage is of course the standout feature, making you even tankier, angrier, and with great weapon master and a powerful two-handed weapon, there really aren't that many things in the game that can stand in your way for too long, and it just feels fantastic on a kinetic and animation level as well. There's something about using sheer tenacity and fury and primal rage that makes Barbarians stick out for me, and I think Baldur's Gate 3 does a really good job of capturing that class fantasy in a way that's satisfying without being too goofy. Feral instinct, brutal critical, Barbarians have some amazing abilities that make them a great frontline for your party as well. For races, I lean toward Dragonborn as my favorite for Barbarian, as their size and natural intimidating presence complements them nicely and they just look incredibly badass while doing it. Though a half-orc is of course another extremely strong choice given their racial traits. For Barbarian subclasses, my least favorite is probably Wild Magic, which is a shame as I think uncontrollable magic goes hand in hand with uncontrollable rage. However, I find the magic focus of Wild Magic a little strange when put into practice, and most of the Wild Magic table effects are just kind of boring or don't really impact anything that much. Next, I'd probably place the Giant Barbarian. While Growing Giant is really cool as you rage and it's fun to have a throwing focus subclass, I don't really find throwing weapons as satisfying or impactful as smashing them into enemies, though I might just need more time with this big addition. My second favorite Barbarian subclass is the Berserker, which is just a classic despite its weakness in some of the tabletop versions. It gives you frenzied rage, and the ability to pick up an enemy and throw it at another will never get old. Berserkers are just really fun, although the Wildheart Barbarian remains my absolute favorite because you just get an awesome variety of options as you free the beast. Wildhearts get a lot of abilities and passives that can change how you approach encounters in different ways. Unhindered movement, eagle diving attacks, resistance to all damage types. It's a different type of animal completely. I'm just getting more and more angry the longer I talk about Barbarians, so we better move on. Number 4, Paladin. Holy shield, it's time for some smiting. While Paladins in D&D can be a little too goody-goody and holier than thou, it's honestly kind of earned, both there and in Baldur's Gate 3. They kind of earn it with their sheer power. Paladins actually rank higher for me here in-game than on the tabletop because I think the oaths add a really cool layer to the role-playing as you try and fulfill them and avoid breaking it in the world of Baldur's Gate. While that can also happen in D&D, it's very DM dependent, so seeing it realized here is pretty cool, though some ways to break your oaths can be questionable at times or difficult to avoid. Paladins are one of the overall best classes in the game though, and remain incredibly powerful and useful, with a variety of radiant spells, but mostly their ability to completely nuke a singular enemy into oblivion, unlike any other class. Divine Smite in Baldur's Gate 3 is just insanely good, and having a high charisma class is always a bonus, as you're pretty much always the face of the party, unless you really focus on using party members to interact with NPCs, but I personally don't find that as much fun due to wanting to play my character. Where some people may not love Paladins as much is due to the class's innate role-playing and character limitations, especially given your oaths. Unless you want to be an Oathbreaker Paladin, which is actually really strong and fun for a playthrough, you're definitely forced to play and respond to the world in certain ways. And as you think through and roleplay your character or background, it can railroad you quite a bit. Even still, it's an extremely fun playstyle as you try and keep your oath in a world that in many ways can reward breaking it. Paladins with their auras and smites are just always an incredibly powerful addition to any party, and I'm glad to see how well realized they are within Baldur's Gate 3 as well. They get quite a bit of unique dialogue as well, including one of the most badass lines in the entire game, but it mostly just reinforces their innate goodness and chivalry. Though Vengeance Paladins and Oathbreakers get some darker, unique dialogue options, which is a nice touch. I generally avoid multi-classing if I can, to be honest, as I just love playing to a class's pure strength and fantasy, but taking a dip into Cleric as a Paladin to have an actual deity to worship is fun, and it gives you some cool deity-specific dialogue options. For races, once again, I may need to go with Dragonborn here as my favorite Paladin race. I don't know why exactly, it could be the early key art I saw saw when first getting into D&D of a Dragonborn Paladin, or how intrinsically tied they are to Bahamut, but there's something about a scaly, powerful Dragonborn Paladin that is just undeniably badass. Paladins get 5 subclasses or oaths, with my least favorite being the Oath of Devotion, which really railroads you into the Knight in Shining Armor archetype, which can be fun, but I find their abilities a little lackluster compared to other oaths, though turning your weapon into a sacred one is very thematic. My next least favorite is the Oath of the Ancients, which while powerful just loses out to the others on flavor for me. With a very nature-focused take on spells, their healing is really good, but it does lose out to the Oath of the Crown, which makes for a much more authoritative and commanding playstyle. Taunting enemies and commanding the battlefield is just a blast, and they get some extremely useful spells like Spiritual Weapon and Spirit Guardians, which makes you a beast in melee. My next favorite is the Oathbreaker, which lets you play a more evil or edgy paladin, one who broke their oaths and replaced it with some pretty nasty magics. Controlling the dead and reinforcing them through your aura of hate is just awesome, and I had a lot of fun with my Dark Urge Oathbreaker playthrough. However, my favorite remains the Oath of Vengeance, which is definitely the more hardcore zealot of the paladins. Vow of Enmity, Bane, Misty Step, they get some really cool abilities that basically make you able to target and decimate single target enemies with extreme prejudice. Basically, you can be Fantasy Judge Dredd, and I'm all here for it. Overall, if you want to just aura farm and smite, then Paladin is the class for you. Number 3, Sorcerer. Now for the sorcery of all my magical joy. Sorcerers remain my favorite pure claster class within both D&D and Baldur's Gate 3 for a variety of fire and ball related reasons. That came out much worse than I thought it would actually. For every virgin wizard buried in books, there is a Chad sorcerer slinging spells through sheer charm and force of personality. Sorcerers don't concern themselves with studying and reading. No, they're beings infused with so much latent magical power that by snapping their fingers they can set everything on fire, and honestly, they're just awesome. In Baldur's Gate 3, sorcerers are my favorite blaster casters, able to reach power levels that get frankly ridiculous as you reach level 12 through their sorcery points and meta magic. Meta magic in general adds such a cool dynamic layer to spells that can't really be realized with any other class. Allowing you to throw 2 at once or extend the duration of them or exclude allies, it's incredibly useful and potent. The ability to control your spell slots through sorcery points is great as well, as you can swap spell slots for points, then use those points to recover higher level slots. It's all very fun and useful in different situations. Sorcerers from a role-playing and class fantasy perspective are just way too much fun, with a lot of unique dialogue options letting you bully Gale about the so-called difficulties of the weave, as you're just naturally gifted with control over it. It makes for some of the best Gale-Tav interactions within the entire game, and beyond that, certain bloodlines like Draconic and Wild Magic get hilarious and badass dialogue options of their own. Being a charisma-focused class also makes Sorcerer a fantastic face of the party, as you can easily deceive or persuade yourself through many situations. Where some may not enjoy Sorcerer as much is their limited spell pool and combat focus. Unlike a wizard, taking any utility or role-playing spell will severely impact you in combat, so in a way they are a little railroaded, or at least lend themselves to very careful consideration of which spells you learn as you level up. Sorcerers also tend to have a pretty drastic power curve where you may struggle in the early levels, but once you hit around level 5, there is a massive jump in your ability to destroy anything in your path through the rest of the game. Double fireballs and powered scorching rays, you'll be a force to be reckoned with if you can survive those first few difficult encounters. For races, I love a good tiefling sorcerer, which was my very first full D&D character I created. Although humans are fitting given their place in the world, and getting light armor and shield proficiency is nothing to snuff at as a very squishy caster. For subclasses, this is actually a tough one because I think each are awesome in their own way. My least favorite is probably Shadow Sorcerer though. While being a edgier, literally darker sorcerer is kind of cool, their features don't really excite me that much, other than high-level Shadow Teleport, which is admittedly awesome. But Dark Vision and Casting Darkness are just okay. It's fine. Next is the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer, which is really good. You get an additional spell specific to your bloodline, do more damage of that type based on your charisma, and get an innate higher AC. Best of all though, you get these badass scales on your character, which come in a variety of colors and patterns and honestly look really cool. But while those features are all great, I slightly prefer the Storm Sorcerer, which has an extremely strong theme as this Master of the Tempest. Literally riding the lightning as a flying sorcerer who can conjure storms is just amazing, and I think both its class fantasy and abilities are a solid A tier. I don't know why I suddenly switched to a tier list thing, but whatever. My favorite has to be the classic Wild Magic Sorcerer though. The chaos-fueled spell slinger that completely embraces the insanity of D&D's random dice rolls. Wild Magic surges are as hilarious as they are helpful or harmful, and can create some truly unique moments or devastating effects for your party, and it's just way too much fun to trigger them. Overall, Sorcerer remains one of my all-time favorite classes within Baldur's Gate 3, and embracing the chaos is what it's all about. Number 2, Bard. Bard. But I'm bardly getting started as we dance and sing our way near the top of the list with the Bard at number 2. I know bards are a very divisive class in D&D, with many people either absolutely loving them or hating them, and unfortunately for you haters out there, I'm of the former. Bards fulfill such a unique and strange niche within the world, being these charismatic, more light-hearted, musically inclined adventurers in a world of dark, dreary death. After playing my Drow Bard through the entire game, I became convinced that this is the canon class for Tav, because the amount of time and care that was seemingly put into Bard's unique role in the party and social interactions is frankly crazy. Bards get an absurd amount of unique dialogue options and interactions, by far the most, and in my opinion the best in the entire game, with unique rewards and discoveries that only they can make. As a bard, you can literally talk enemies and bosses to death, or just mock them to their faces in some truly hilarious ways. My favorite bard interaction has to be when you deliberately mess up Volo's desperate rhyming at the goblin camp, just absolutely hilarious. From a social encounter and skill check perspective, bards are just unmatched, with almost guaranteed success on any roll for any interaction or skill check that might be needed when it comes to persuasion, deception, or intimidation. So while other classes may be more effective or fun in combat, bards are just one of the most engaging in other types of scenarios and out of combat encounters. Also, being able to play your instrument and make a performance check at any time to distract or make a little bit of extra gold is a nice touch, though I know you can get that through a feat as well. I also feel like a bard player character is so fitting due to their role as a support for the party. An extra short rest, bardic inspiration, magical secrets, they have some extremely flavorful and fun abilities that I still enjoy using every time. My only small gripe with bards in Baldur's Gate 3 is that you're pretty heavily forced into the more musical and whimsical archetype for a bard, one that is probably the most commonly associated with the class, whereas in D&D you have freedom to make your bard character a powerful skald, warrior, or really any type of character that uses magic in a more unique way than a wizard or sorcerer. As far as races go, really almost any of them fit really well and can be made to work from a character perspective, though that applies to every single class honestly. I do love an elven bard though. Their graceful, beautiful nature lends themselves well to the charming bard. Of the subclass options or schools for bards, my least favorite is probably the newer College of Glamour. Being so charming that enemies can't help but be enamored by you is kind of fun, but in game they only really get Mantle of Inspiration and rely on that and charm heavily for the entire subclass, which is just kind of boring compared to other options. Next is the College of Lore, which is extremely useful in a tabletop game as you can easily pass things like history and investigation checks and generally just be a know-it-all. In Baldur's Gate 3 though, it's much less useful to me, though cutting words is always a fun ability. The other two subclasses are kind of tied for me, though I probably give the edge to the College of Valor over the Swords. College of Swords is really cool, and having a variety of helpful flourishes really helps sell the sword dancing class fantasy, but I find Valor bards just seem better suited to melee combat overall, and with their extra attack, a decent melee combatant in their own right. Combat inspiration is also incredibly useful for buffing your other harder hitting companions. Overall, bards are a very fun class that will always inspire new character ideas. Number 1, Cleric. Say your prayers because last but certainly not least, we have the humble, unassuming Cleric. When I was first introduced to D&D and its classes, even just hearing the class name Cleric, I thought, oh, so just a squishy, wimpy little healing class, right? I couldn't have been more wrong. Clerics are no shrimpy priests. They are the zealous and holy gods of the battlefield, wading into war with armor and shield and a plethora of radiant spells and divine powers to cleanse the land in righteous flame. Clerics are just absolutely badass, and I'm happy to say my favorite class within the entire game, as they get some of the most fun and powerful spells to me. A part of me wonders how many people play Cleric though, given the prevalence of Shadowheart throughout the story and her basically guaranteed spot within the party for most players, though I still need to get around to playing a saloon worshipping cleric to see those unique interactions. Clerics, given their worship of a specific deity, get a lot of great unique dialogue, though it's not as deity specific as I'd like, more just good versus evil. So worshipping Tiamat or Grumpsh doesn't really give any specific dialogue for them that I've found, but more just a general evil cleric vibe, which, don't get me wrong, can be very fun as well. Either way, I think clerics offer some fantastic roleplay opportunities, especially if you get into character and perform actions on behalf of or in the name of your deity. It can be really engaging and add another layer to your character's development. Bless, guidance, guiding bolt, healing word, spiritual weapons, spirit guardians, mass cure wounds, flame strike, clerics get an insane amount of, in my opinion, the coolest and most useful spells within the entire game, with each subclass or domain of cleric offering some really unique gameplay elements compared to each other. Considering clerics get 8 domains, I'll quickly cover each from my personal least favorite to favorite once again, starting with the unfortunate trickery domain. The first step in any playthrough for Baldur's Gate 3 is to respec Shadowheart from this subclass as quickly as you can, because it's genuinely one of the worst in the entire game. Advantage on stealth for a creature is basically useless. Invoke Duplicity, Mirror Image, it's not that they're unusable, but compared to your other options, it's really bad. Next is probably Knowledge. It's a good domain and very non-combat focused, as you're basically one who studies all kinds of things, but again in Baldur's Gate 3 I find it less useful than others as well, though Hold Person as a spell is always nice to have. So it loses out to my next domain, which is Nature. Basically a cleric druid hybrid, nature domain clerics can be pretty powerful and get some nice control spells such as Spike and Plant Growth, though they also lose to the edgy Death domain, which is an awesome subclass. Honestly, this is your death focused cleric who uses necromancy as easily as any other spell type and generally just spread necrotic energy everywhere they go. Truly a wonderful subclass. However, I always preferred the war domain cleric to them, which gets heavy armor and a variety of helpful skills in combat. As cool and flavorful as war domain is though, sometimes I don't wonder why I wouldn't just play a paladin at that point, though you miss out on more spell slots and versatility. But if I'm going melee cleric, I actually prefer the Tempest domain. With heavy armor and lightning, you thunder your deity and religion across the battlefield with no subtlety. Using Channel Divinity to max the damage of your lightning and thunder spells will always be badass and feel really impactful. But as much as I love Tempest clerics, I slightly prefer life clerics as my second favorite domain. I won't lie, even though I said clerics aren't just healers, it doesn't mean that they don't make damn good ones, and a life cleric Shadowheart carried me in my first playthrough pretty hard. The amount of healing you can pump out as a life cleric is staggering, and a massive addition to any party composition, and I'm basic in how much I enjoy using them and keeping the party standing. My favorite cleric domain, however, remains the Cleansing Fire of the Light domain. Fully embracing a more zealous approach to conversion, light domain clerics just get a really good variety of support and damage spells and abilities. Warding Flare is incredibly useful, and having Fireball as a cleric, yeah, it's Fireball. It's going to be explosively fun. In Baldur's Gate 3 especially though, I find light clerics really powerful, given the darkness and curse of Act 2, which you can dispel with your variety of sunlight and powerful radiant abilities. Light domain sort of captures the essence of the cleric for me, as a righteous beacon of hope on the battlefield. Whew, and there we have it, all 12 classes in Baldur's Gate 3 ranked worst to best, aka my personal favorites and least favorites. Let me know what I missed, what I got wrong, and why you hate me for it, but remember, it's all in good fun and I make no attempts at being objective here. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more rankings, and throw out some Baldur's Gate 3 ranking ideas in the comments below. That's it for me, until next time.